So, corporates and startups. And I have with me two corporates, two startups, and a fund manager. I mean, okay, and we're going to try and take a deep dive to unravel if it's a match made in heaven or hell, or are we lost in translation? And could it be a great marriage? And since we're going to talk about marriages, I'm going to start with two of our panelists that are, allow me to say, kind of flirting and going to a wedding. So I'm going to start off with Fameline, Stefanos.
Lucky me.
Lucky you. Yeah, of course it is. We have the pleasure to start with you, because you say on your website, relationships beyond contracts. So it looks like a group that has collaborations and partnerships in their DNA. So tell us about that. How did you start?
Very good. Well, rightly spotted, Stavriana. Fameline Holding has a long history of partnerships. It is in our DNA. And I would say that we owe our success as well due to partnerships and to long-term collaborations with a number of parties. Those could be startups, those could be established businesses, those could be companies that are essentially in a position to add value to our core activities. So I would borrow the say that Alan used before. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that has been our motto for many years as well. And I'm very happy to have the opportunity to put into that context how we have collaborated with startups in the past few years, and what is the real value that those startups have brought to our company, and essentially in developing a comparative advantage towards our competition.
Thank you. And I'm going to jump right onto Scott. Scott, how did you get to work together? How did it happen? Was it serendipity? Did you, bump into each other while having coffee somewhere? Is it something that happens by chance? How did this happen?
There was a little bit of chance, but it was quite serendipitous. We've got a really great incubator, an accelerating company that works with us called Kinesis Ventures. And again, to go back to what Alain was saying, we have a vision of decarbonizing the shipping industry. We feel that the shipping industry, while they're trying to move as fast as they can, they were actually almost at a negative starting position, just given the dynamics of the industry. And Kinesis Ventures, we were collaborating. Again, I'll use that word a lot, collaborating, and we were strategizing and thinking about, we're in an industry. So what we're trying to do is inject hydrogen into merchant vessel engines. So again, it's a complicated industry. It's a high barrier to entry industry. Proprietary technology, huge budgets, huge ships, very difficult to gain access. So again, we knew right away that we couldn't do this alone. And so the way that we were introduced to Fameline was through Kinesis Ventures. They had met Fameline before. They knew that they were interested in innovation and technology and, again, partnerships and looking for the right partner. And we were lucky. We hit it off. Again, we were flirting with each other. The flirting's going quite well. And we're excited about the future.
Fantastic. And Daphne, I'm gonna jump to you, because you come from the pharma industry, which is a heavily regulated
Very
industry.
regulated.
So what has been your experience, and what does it take for a pharma company to collaborate with a startup? Is it as easy as it sounds in the other industries?
Well, in our case, no, not at all. We actually, as a company, haven't collaborated with a startup so far, even if there have been some contacts in the past. The reason is what you mentioned, Stavriana, the regulations and how regulated it is. It really makes it hard for a startup to be prepared for these challenges that mean working with the pharma industry. So because it's such a regulated market, and because a startup has to be prepared for that, and usually they're not, they're just starting out, having great ideas, it hasn't worked out well so far. However, I have to say that in the R&D section, We have the most famous example of a startup big pharma collaboration recently that we all know by Pfizer and BioNTech, which happened, and it happened that we all know about it, which happened actually when the product was right. So BioNTech was already there. They were working on the mRNA technology for a long time. And when the COVID-19 vaccine came up, Pfizer stepped in and took over the distribution, the scale-up, and so on and so forth. So it has to have the right product in order for the right product, the right time, for corporate, pharma, and startups to work.
So be prepared.
Be prepared, yeah, yeah.
So thank you, Daphne. I'm going to jump to Michael. You're already married to Delivery Hero, right? This is one of the recent 2019 acquisition from German Delivery Hero of a Cypriot born and bred startup. So first of all, how did you get in touch with Delivery Hero, or how did they get in touch with you, and how did they find you, and how did this magic happen?
So a colleague just asked me exactly that moments ago. I get up here. So the answer is we flirted with each other. All right. So this is not a process.
There's a lot of that.
yeah. We flirted. I mean, we needed to get on the radar. They needed to approach us. So in these stories, there are some kind of negotiations that you can go at the early stage very direct. So this is how we get to know each other, with a very nice way. All right. So yes, we got to Delivery Hero family. So maybe I don't know how much a startup are we right now. Delivery Hero probably is a corporate company, but with harsh founders. Delivery Hero is built and is running right now by founders. All right. So this is the reason we're there as well. So I agree with Daphne. You have to be ready. You have to be ready to wear different hats. You have to be able to adapt to new realities. There is something I say that it is very, very important, that what brought you here doesn't mean that will get you further. So you always have to advance your game, to change things, and adapt to new realities. So yes, we were a team of 20, 30, 40 people, a startup company. Right now we do have 150 full-time people plus 500 people on our fleet. So yeah, we have to work with some processes, with some guidelines, while at the same time we try to stay founders in our hearts.
And the founder's mindset that Alan mentioned before.
Yeah, this is it.
Keep doing it. And I'm going to jump to Carlos, because we have a different take here as well. We all know that, especially in Europe, trade sales is an exit option, because IPOs, or the big IPOs that we hear from the US, are not really an option. So what are the challenges of trade sales? And do you see them as a potential exit option for Cypriot startups or regional startups as well?
Yeah, I mean, as one would expect, trade sales and general M&A in Cyprus is more muted than it would have been, than it is in the rest of Europe, and which is natural given the size of Cyprus. So, which is of course bad news for Cypriot startups because of the absence of capital markets in Cyprus. So you can really forget, exiting via an IPO. You can even forget secondaries in Cyprus, even though the funds industry is picking up and it's partially able to fill that gap. So the reality is that if a Cypriot startup wants to have an exit, and its investors they want an exit, they would need to, let's say, they need to break out of the borders of Cyprus and enter the international arena. They need to be able to hit the radar of international industry players. Because, as I said, chances are the entities that are able to acquire them and to eventually give them that exit, it would be those internationals. Because M&A, it's a complex creature. It's a very, it's a leap of faith for both sides, fair enough, but for the acquirer, it's a very heavy, laborious exercise. So unless the acquirer has a dedicated M&A team, they have an internal team that is able to handle the vast, most of that work, it will fall upon the senior management, and it will take up a lot of resources, it will take up a lot of time, and it's also a huge distraction to the running of the day-to-day running of the operation. So, in that sense, there aren't many secret entities or corporates that are big enough to be able to give that exit. Which, of course, it's in many ways it's natural, and also even if they had, let's say, the balls to go ahead and make an acquisition, chances are that there are less chance of a success, of that ending up in a successful outcome. Because unless you have the team that's going to properly due diligence the acquisition, it's going to carry it out, and more importantly, it's able to implement it, to integrate the startup into the larger organization, they're going to have a hard time. So even if they did try it, chances are they got burned in the process. So the importance for those early, the startups. So unless they're able to hit the radar, the international radar, they are probably going to have a hard time getting an exit from a super corporate in general.
Thank you. I'm going to come back in a while and ask about some positive aspects that could possibly be there. But before that, I want to ask Stefanos, going back to Fainline, what do you put in the relationship? What do you give as a group to the startups? Because I understand it takes a lot of time. It's like what Carlos mentioned. It takes a lot of management time when you're involved with startups in order for this to actually become something that is valuable. So,
right. Well, from our perspective, first of all, we try to bring the most senior people to our game. So we are bringing our A team when we're discussing to startups. So usually we have the senior leadership of the group, and that is something that we expect. So in that dance, in that flirting time or period, that I would say with Scott, for example, it took perhaps a year to get to the point where we actually saw eye to eye. And I'm seeing my friend Andreas from Guinness Ventures down the audience, who has been very instrumental, and he played a very crucial role in bringing us together. So what we're bringing to the table, to cut it short, we are bringing in, from our side, as Fainline Holding, we're bringing in the customer bases, we're bringing access to the market, we are bringing know-how, which is, at this stage, and especially in a field which is not too far from the pharma, the maritime world is heavily regulated. So startups, they need to understand what is going on on the regulatory side, but also what is going on what are the trends going forward in the future. An example, the other day we had a meeting with a number of startups at the office. Some of them were on the spot, on a technology which is fantastic, but it seems to be at the phasing out part. So we had to find a way to advise them in a way to pivot from it, in a way that they probably wouldn't be able to see otherwise, unless they were sitting on the same table with the end user and the supplier at the same time. So that, I think, it's an invaluable type of value and offering that we're giving to the startups. Of course, I don't want to go into the standards, which are the functions, legal support and finance support and all that. I think those, you can find them, not anywhere, but you can find them, they are standard. What the real benefit of the strategic collaboration between a startup and a corporate is really to understand the market, it's really to understand the strategic synergies between the two in a way that it will be a win-win relationship to go forward.
Well, since I'm kind of Scott is technology challenged at the moment, well, I'll give him a benefit of a. All right, there you're ready. You're ready. All right. Oh, we could have gone not tech, and you just shouted.
Yeah.
So, any skeletons in the room, if I may ask? Time to bring the dirty laundry out. How is it to work with a corporate like, well, not like Fameline, but in general, you know? How it has been your experience over the 1 year of...
Yeah, I think
I'm not going to tell him, so you can... I'll keep it between us.
Yeah. No, I think we've all been grappling with this. The biggest skeleton for us, anyways, is COVID. COVID's dragged things out way longer than anyone would anticipate here. You know, we met, I think, at the end of 2019, for instance, and we're still testing in the Port of Limassol around the corner. But you know, again, it was one of these things where when we met them, you know, again, we were excited. We shared the same vision. Again, as Stefanos was saying, they've got a lot of expertise, and we want to move very fast. And then, of course, COVID happened. And, you know, we're happy to say that nothing's been put on ice or, you know, we've took major steps back. But again, the biggest skeleton is just, you know, thinking about where we thought we would be 2 years ago. We're still kind of, we're almost coming out of the mud now. But again, having a corporate like Stefanos and Fameline behind us, again, we feel like we're about to emerge from this sort of cloudy period, let's say, and again, one of the biggest things over the last 24 months is, you know, decarbonization, hydrogen. A lot of these climate change ideas have really come to the forefront. And COP26 is happening in Glasgow in a month, and again, you're going to see more regulation, more government intervention, more stimulus for companies like ours who are trying to change things. And again, being with Fameline at that point will really help us with the liftoff. So I hope that answered it. It wasn't as exciting, I think.
No spicy details, but yeah, it seems like you are working towards a successful marriage from what I hear. Daphne, Medochimie is a very extroverted company, and it accounts for over 60% of pharma exports of the country. So as an extroverted company in that sense, what would it take to reach you, shall we say? Where can a startup find you, apart from literally coming in the offices in Limassol and knocking on the door? And I'm guessing that just cold knocking on the door is probably not going to work. So let's just say they find you here, but where else can they find you? What would be a blueprint, if you like, for them to find you and start talking and see where it goes?
I think, I mean, the company's across 30 countries, so if one doesn't find me here, or me personally, would find the company in one of the 30 countries. And so we are really very extroverted. We develop, produce, and sell and distribute pharmaceuticals all over the world, almost. We are usually here in the R&D and the operations. I am personally taking care of the operations here. With regards to startups and how would be, you know, what would be interesting for me to see from startups is companies that deal with data, that have solutions, because we have a lot of data. Companies that deal with supply chains. We have obviously global supply chains issues. And companies probably dealing with R&D, but I don't, as I said before, this is not something that happens typically, at least not in Cyprus. Yes. Yeah. So this is where, you know, startups and our company could meet. And I guess it's very difficult to have a successful marriage between a corporate and a startup from the start. It would be extremely difficult to get our interest in investing in something which is usually disruptive, and it usually has a high risk attached to it. And corporates usually have, you know, budgets and pipelines and other things that they're looking at it with higher priorities. They have different priorities, and that's where it's difficult to meet.
But I do take a very important takeaway from what you said, that it's not just the core business of a company that's important for, in your case, the pharma part, it's also the other important operational factors. You mentioned distribution, which is supply chains that are unbelievably extremely important.
Very complex.
Nowadays, especially.
Global, yeah.
And AI, so it's like startups from across the board can basically get in touch or approach, well, probably from what I heard in an airport lounge, apart from the office, because people like you usually travel, but you know, whatever works, guys, whatever works, literally, catch them where you can.
With COVID, it was not so possible, but now, yeah, we
Now
started traveling. We're back on track, yeah.
Thank God. Thank you. So, Mihaly, what's it like working with Delivery Hero now? I mean, you did mention that it's important that they kept their founders' mindset, and you're also startups, but you're kind of now starting to wear the suit of the not so startup-y suit, because there's a lot of processes. But what is really like being married to a startup?
So it is something that either you like it or you don't like it, if I may say so. I like it a lot.
To a corporate, sorry.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you have to work with financial, you have to work with budgeting, and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, I believe that we wouldn't be with Delivery Hero today if we didn't make such a great fit. Delivery Hero is a rapidly growing company, not only in online food delivery, but in other sectors as well, like quick commerce. So they're very aggressive, investing in new things, in new ideas, expanding. They support the local entities a lot. So this is the primary way of doing business. They support countries. So this is very interesting. And we wouldn't have the ability to work that way if we were not working with Delivery Hero right now. You personally know firsthand that me and Argyris many years ago were like the crazy ones here, trying to figure out things. We needed to learn things from scratch. If we want to learn something, we need to take 6 months of experimenting and invest a lot of money to see that something is not working. Right now, we have access to 50 countries plus. We just ask something and we see how this is working for us. And if I can add a comment to the previous question as well, how you can reach out to a corporate organization, and I'm going to share my perspective from a founder startup perspective, that startups should not have a problem to open doors like Daphne's. I mean, they have to find ways to get there. They shouldn't be shy or embarrassed to do that. So there is a lot of, sorry for taking your time, but there is a lot of talk about how startups talk to corporates. I mean, this shouldn't be a problem at all. We have the idea in our minds that startup founders are young years out of the university. This is not like that. I mean, we are speaking of executives and people that they got out of some industries. They have access to industries in most of the time with a new product, new value proposition. So they need to know to do that. Or if they don't know how, I didn't know that. They need to be able to learn how to get there. It is on the benefit of a big organization or a big corporate company to speak with startups, to see what is going there, because this is a competitive advantage. If a big company is not there to acquire something that has value proposition, a competitor is going to do that. So I don't see any reason why any founder shouldn't be able to go there.
Absolutely. Well, audacity, it usually pays, right? And
there are many ways of collaboration, I believe. I mean, it's one thinks of immediately of a buyout, but it's not just that. I mean, in earlier stages, I think that corporates and startups should start thinking of ways of how to collaborate, get to know each other in a much lighter way.
Have a drink or two, then dinner, and then see where it goes, and if they'll end up popping the question, you know? Carlo, what does it mean?
Yeah, actually, I would like to add to what Daphne said. I mean, there's the trade sale, it's the end of the road, right? So there's huge investment value, investor value, in such collaborations with strategic, with corporates, with large corporates. And I think the value is twofold. On the one hand, you have a very important signaling effect for investors, especially the early stage investors, in the sense that these collaborations are usually the precursor. They usually lead to investments by these corporates, and inshallah, at a later stage, they would lead to the eventual acquisition. So for an early stage investor to have seen that the corporate has embarked on that road, they've gone to the first step of that marriage, it's, as I said, it's a huge signaling effect. On the other hand, there's also a validation value for investors, meaning that, I mean, the reality, the truth of the matter is that investors in their majority, both individual but also institutional investors, they usually lack the technical expertise to be able to really properly assess the technology and really what that startup is all about. So the fact that a large international industry player, even local, someone that knows the industry inside out, has shown trust to such a startup and to their technology, to their product, to the management team itself, is hugely beneficial for investors. It ticks a very big box for investors. And to a large extent, it de-risks the proposition, especially for the early stage guys. So, I mean, what's the conclusion to that? That I personally believe that if startups should do whatever it takes, even at the expense of short-term commercial gains, in order to strike up such deals as early as possible, because this is something that will pay off down the road.
Okay, I have a question for everyone, because I've been here, we've been joking and talking about marriage and relationships and all of that, but, and we talk about tech a lot, and there are humans behind that, and I also heard the word trust been mentioned a lot of times. So is chemistry important in this journey, just like in any human relation? Even in, because you did mention the management team, so that's also a team. People is probably the most important thing after you tick, the necessary boxes. So I'd like, and I'm going to start with Daphne and go across. And so, what is your take?
Well, chemistry is important everywhere in life, in everything you do, in business, yeah, it's important everywhere, and yeah, it definitely would be very important factor.
It is about how it clicks.
Yes, how it clicks. Yeah, definitely.
How does that transcribe in the everyday working between a corporate and a startup, Stefan?
Well, I mean, going back to your original question, the shipping sector and the maritime sector
Is known to be the people's business, right? So many have described shipping as well to be, in terms of tech, a sleeping giant, a sleeping dinosaur, all those horrible names. So the underlying fact that it's people who are bringing corporates or startups or any type of collaborations together, then indeed chemistry is extra important. And that takes a lot of effort. I'll just give an example. When you have a meeting with a startup and then you say to them, all right, let's embark on this project together. 100% of the times, you will get a follow-up email or phone call the next day. In a corporate, the next day, well, let me put it differently. For a startup, a project will have a 3 weeks duration. For a corporate, 3 weeks will probably be the time that we will need to find the next available slot to meet with them. So all of those elements, it makes it very hard for the startups, but it also makes it very challenging as well for the corporates to bring those collaborations forward. So the relationship between the people, it is extremely important. They need to be understanding, and we also need to be on our side a bit more, let's say, less corporate in that way.
Khali, is it a people's game?
Definitely, it is a people's game. I mean, my understanding is that big corporations are investing in teams, most of all, rather than, I mean, there are very rare cases where an M&A is happening for things that are not people-oriented, like intellectual property, but all the other times, these are teams. Investors are investing in teams, in people. Companies are acquiring teams, all right? And there's a word for what you're saying, chemistry. It is called culture, all right? A startup has a team, has its culture. And there is a strong culture in a big corporation. So those two things have to make match, all right? If they don't match, you need to go somewhere else. This is what I know.
And culture is very important for foodie. I've known you and Ariris from back in the old days, and culture has always been very key for your company.
Yeah, someday we might print a book with our culture, yes. Culture is something that is starting from the founders, all right? And it's evolving from the rest of the team across here. So culture is still there and it's evolving, and it is your DNA, I would say.
Thank you. So, Scott, is it a people's game? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just talk a little bit more about trust, which, for us, we're patent pending. It's very scientific. Again, it's hydrogen. It's a new energy molecule, or it's the oldest energy molecule in the world, but for the energy markets now, it's the newest. It's an alternative energy. So again, there's a lot of things that are kind of going in the secret sauce. So there's a lot of trust that we need, and I guess maybe in our own little heads we think it's very important, but again, it's the relationship that we have, say, with the Fame line, where again we trust each other. Our scientific advisors are doing a lot of work. They're doing iterations on things. They're trying to be at the forefront of what we're trying to do. And again, we're in Cyprus, so it's a different kind of market. And so the trust is really important. And so again, when it comes to the relationship aspect, we've got Fameline who's talking to the end user, who talks to the supply chains, understands maybe the regulatory environments. And so when it comes to trust, it's important that we have a good back and forth relationship, and that we can kind of keep it in the room, because again, we're really trying to develop something unique. So for us, trust is really important.
Caroline, okay, a bit of a cheeky question. Usually,
You said no tricky questions. You promised.
I promise. No, you're going to like this one, I think, because usually, the rest of the world thinks of investors are the people that only care about numbers and due diligence and the technical due diligence. Do you have this and do you have that? But so coming back to you, because you did mention the management team and the importance of that. I want your take. I want you to expand on that.
I mean,
See, it was a good question.
Okay, fair enough. Could have been worse. It's a cliche by now, right? It's all about, people, right? When it comes to startups. But, to just build on what the other guys said, yes, trust is important and chemistry is important. But the process of the startup founders beginning to interact with the corporates it's a litmus test. It's a very interesting test to see whether that team that is might be great guys in the lab, great guys in front of the PC or even pitching to investors, but can they really play the corporate game? Can they think corporate? Can they understand? Can they adapt? Can they be flexible? Can they really navigate through the complexities and the chaos, which is a large corporate, and with different heads and different teams that might not interact between them, very well. Frustration. They might not be taken seriously at first, so they need to, really push their way through and remain calm and understand that these things take time. Corporates move slowly, and this is something where I think I've seen a lot of startups fail, when they had to really start thinking as their clients are, as their partners are.
But even though you mentioned before that one good step is to talk to corporates that are international, so most of them are outside of Cyprus, that would be even harder to approach these people, because you're going to end up talking to different department heads somewhere that probably don't talk to each other, or they don't talk as often with senior management as the startup would like.
Yes.
Wouldn't you say that actually starting closer to home and having the first validation from a relation with a local bigger company is also very valuable, that is a stepping stone to go higher and outwards? later on.
Okay, maybe I misrepresented what I wanted to say before. It's not a matter of the corporate being an international, headquartered outside Cyprus. It's a corporate that has international reach and mind frame. Could be anywhere, could be in Cyprus, could be abroad, but mostly it's abroad. Okay? So from a statistical sense, it probably is going to be someone outside.
All right. And any last words for anybody before we wrap it up? Something that I failed to ask, it's good to learn, that you would like to share that is totally outside of the box. And if not, I will say that I heard some very important takeaways. I heard about networking, how the match was made with Kinesis Venture. I don't know if Andreas is still here, because my eyesight, it might be failing me right now, but networking and trying to find people to introduce you to the right people is important. Hustling, and startups. What are startups other than hustlers and trying to figure it out? Because it's really whatever works to get to find the right match. It takes a lot of respect from both sides, an understanding of each other's world and realities. More for the startups, I would say, than the corporates, because the corporates can get lost in their own world and do not really understand that, today you're excited, but tomorrow you're dying, and they need to respond in 24 hours, because they're not going to respond in 24 hours. So do factor that in when you approach corporates. And it takes trust. And even though they say that, it's like women are from Mars. Oh, no, women are from Venus and men are from Mars. It's probably the same situation, different planets. But there is a way. I mean, we are literally going to Mars, thanks to a fantastic startup, founder, Mr. Musk. So we're finding a way to do that. So I'm sure that startups and corporates can find a way to create great marriages. Chief, because you're next. I'm calling you up here to tell me what you think about this discussion. So there's a way to go to Mars, and there's a way to talk to each other. And I want to thank you for highlighting these ways. And do you guys have any questions before I let them go? This is your time. Well, thank you. I will take that as a vote of confidence that this panel has been fantastic. So please join me to give them a big thank you and a big hand. And I take the pleasure to call on stage the inspirer of this panel, the Chief Scientist of the Republic of Cyprus, Dr. Nikolas Mastrogiannopoulos. And my chair.
I was actually not expecting that. Thank you.
Well, hi.
I thought we had enough fire chats today, but anyhow.
Oh, that's a wonderful setting. What do you think? Did it live up to your expectation? An unbelievable panel you set up together.
Yeah, I think a lot came out of this discussion. Obviously, I see that everybody embraced the fact that those two planets can meet somewhere. When you have two planets providing different material, you create more through the mixing of the two. So if you have more material, more innovation. That's what I believe.
Is there a sun in the middle, and what that sun could be? I mean, you are also the chair of the Research and Innovation Foundation, and I know that you do care about facilitating this kind of collaborations, etc. So is the RIF the sun? And how do we make it to be the sun?
I don't know if the RIF is the sun, but I totally believe in teamwork and collaboration. I mean, I collaborate with you, you're an angel investor, etc. You're the vice chair. I'm a scientist, I'm a molecular biologist, entrepreneur, I believe. I work with Theodoros, the Director General of EDEC. He's an engineer, MBA manager, leading the organization. I mean, we don't have much in common, but at the end of the day, we work together in order to create something that has the substance, a clear strategy that will foster innovation, foster the tries that everybody does to make the RNA ecosystem here in Cyprus strong, investable, scalable, and at the end of the day, when everything comes in place, it will create a competitive advantage for the country, diversified economy, and I believe the products and services at the end of the day will be of value from society, from people, walking around the marina today. Technology helps, innovation helps. Climate change, Alan said about climate change, we're totally, I mean, that problem doesn't reflect only to startups, corporates, countries, politicians in general. So it's something where we all have to, work together, either by calling ourselves the sun or by calling ourselves the Venus or I don't know what planet. At the end of the day, we are all under the same sky, and we have to challenge problems synergistically and with a teamwork spirit. That's my belief. So we will do our share, our 2 cents will be there for sure.
So it's literally doers united. So let's do this.
The doers united, of course. When you unite things are coming forward. That's it. So yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
I think people are pretty much hungry now, up to now. So yeah.
So I want to thank you because we should stop talking and start doing, right? So go network because that's how you start to get married to a corporate or a startup. Thank you, people.
Thank you.